Hello, welcome to a short video presentation on the benefits, challenges, and resources available to you as you consider installing a solar project on your farm. Today, we'll be going over all the details to give you the knowledge you need to make this decision, which can be a big one. So let's dive right in. First things first, let me share a little more about myself and our program. My name is Nicholas Cusick, and I work as a part of a team called the Rural Energy Development for Washington program, which is funded in large part by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Development Office. The program is a partnership between Snohomish Conservation District, Pierce Conservation District, and a local nonprofit, Spark Northwest, which was known previously as Northwest Seed. We provide technical and grant writing assistance to farmers and rural small businesses statewide to purchase or install renewable energy or make energy efficiency improvements. Before I discuss the ins and outs of solar, I wanted to be sure to give you some context as you consider whether solar is right for you. To start, I'll share some reasons why we've seen a growing interest in renewable energy from rural communities and farmers over the past several years. One of the biggest reasons is climate change. Our planet is warming owing to a changing climate, and many of us are left wondering what part we can play to solve these problematic issues. And we've learned through our work that farmers are very much in tune with these concerns. Energy management is just one action amongst a suite of actions that farmers are already taking to sustainably manage their farms in a way that protects our communities and our local environment. We've also experienced firsthand that a farmer's relationship to their land is deeply personal. For many of the farmers that we've worked with, it all connects back to their lifetime commitment to serve better food in a sustainable way to their communities. One such farmer we worked with a couple of years ago is Sean Buden-Schoen. Sean is the owner and operator of a blueberry farm and distillery that he manages alongside his wife, Mariah. Sean and Mariah were just beginning to fit all the pieces together for starting a new blueberry distillery on their property. The still and associated equipment were projected to have a massive energy draw, something that a new business would find financially challenging to pay for. They also care about their environmental footprint. Both factors got them interested in clean energy alternatives. After talking with a local contractor and connecting with our program, they realized how financially doable it would be to make solar happen on their property, especially when factoring in the REAP grant and a low-interest loan from Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union. And now, a huge point of pride for them is the solar arrays installed on top of their distillery. And they take every opportunity to show the panels off to their customers when they come out to the farm to pick blueberries or visit the distillery. Here's another example of a family and farming operation in the Skagit Valley. Jessica of Harmony Fields makes custom craft cheeses from organic pasture-raised sheep and certified organic herbs. The panels that she installed now power the creamery's 8-stall milking parlor and milking machines, as well as heating, refrigeration, and a large shipping container now functioning as an herb dryer. Small farms like these are usually trying to find ways to efficiently cut costs to make their farming financially viable. For Jessica, solar seemed like a common sense solution to increase financial sustainability and resiliency for the farm. And now they're saving something like $1,600 per year now that they are no longer paying their electricity bill. So before even getting into renewable energy, I always like to start with recommending an energy smart strategy for your farm, moving from more cost affordable options to the most expensive. Your first and number one goal, that low hanging fruit, is through energy conservation. Energy conservation essentially involves making changes in your electricity usage behavior. For example, installing lighting timers, smart thermostat settings, and cutting out any unused electricity. If you talk with a good contractor who's really worth their salt, that's the first thing that they are going to recommend. Only after you adjust your energy behavior and install more energy efficiency equipment are you ready for those more costly renewable energy projects, like solar or wind. Just to highlight this point, I want to share a story with you that a contractor recounted to me. He shared about a woman that reached out to him expressing interest in solar. She told this contractor that her energy bill was just getting out of control, and she needed other options to offset the costs. He took one look at her energy bills and saw that something wasn't quite adding up. Her energy use was skyrocketing compared to the average home in Western Washington. Sure enough, he visited her property, and her detached garage was lined with baseboard heaters that were on nearly 24/7. She had left the baseboard heaters on simply because she wanted to get into a warm car every morning. She wound up switching out those baseboard heaters, and she actually saved hundreds of dollars a month on her utility bills. In the end, she wound up not even needing solar. That's just one example, perhaps a bit on the extreme side of things, but it highlights the point I'm trying to get at. I'm not going to go line by line through this, but here are other energy conservation or efficiency considerations for your farm or home that you need to look at. These include lighting, installing timers or temperature controls, insulation, and other on-the-farm equipment upgrades, like heat lamps or walk-in coolers, all of which are low cost, at least relative to installing a big solar panel system. And just to go back to this quickly, notice how the funnel pictured here starts wide with energy conservation and narrows down to renewable energy. The point to be made here is that energy behavior changes in installing energy efficiency equipment means that ultimately you don't need to purchase and install as large of a solar system as you would have needed to before taking those actions, which makes a solar project ultimately more financially feasible, or perhaps in the end, not even necessary. Moving on, I'm now going to spend the remainder of my time talking about renewable energy, and mostly solar. Renewable energy technologies other than solar exist and are possible for small farms. However, they often come with their own set of challenges or high hurdles to clear. For example, microhydro projects often have to meet rigorous permit standards, for example, by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And bioenergy is not scaled down enough to be financially or technically viable for smaller farms. Wind is also severely geographically limited to only certain areas, namely eastern and central parts of the state. Considering these challenges, we usually steer people towards installing solar on their farms. Typically, solar systems are installed on an already existing structure. You can attach solar safely and securely without any concern for water leakage. Panels produce DC or direct current, just like the power that comes out of a flashlight. The power produced goes into an inverter or microinverters, which turn the DC into AC, or alternating current, which is a perfect sine wave matching with what we use in our homes and appliances. It's what our grid is really built on. When it comes to solar energy production, it is about as simple as it sounds. Whenever there is light, you're producing electricity. Your appliances can't tell if it's coming from the grid or coming from your solar system. And as often is the case in those summer months, you might ask what happens if you're producing more electricity than you can use. Well, it goes out into the grid through your bidirectional meter. This meter measures the power you are pulling from the electrical grid. and also how much power you are putting back out. This is called net metering. You can think of net metering as the energy grid acting essentially like a big battery. When you're producing excess electricity, the utility returns you an additional credit on your bill that you can use at night or in the winter months when it's darker or cloudier outside. The system is often sized in a way to smooth the curve so that between production and net metering, it offsets your entire electricity use. As far as what an ideal site looks like for a solar system, this should be pretty obvious, but your roof should face a southerly direction with up to 45 degrees variance, which is okay. Anything beyond that, you're going to see declines in production upwards of 10 to 15%. This is because the sun is mostly in the southern sky pointing northwards. The good news is that with the steady decline of cost per panel, contractors can offset these losses with additional panels while still maintaining cost affordability and production to offset your electric usage on property. Another consideration for your solar system is that you need enough roof space to mount your panels. Ground mounts are an alternative when roof mount isn't. In some cases, like on old pole barns, you also might need a professional engineering report and possibly reinforcement to support the weight of the panels. When it comes to the pitch for the panels, your ideal angle is somewhere around 30%. However, it doesn't matter if you deviate too much from that. And contractors can work with whatever your pitch or slope that your roof is at. This is because of the technology of flush mount roof tie-ins. And of course, the less shading from nearby trees or buildings, the better. When a contractor comes out to your site to assess your property, they will often measure or model the amount of shading that your roof experiences. And then they will size your system appropriately to still match your yearly electricity demand. Switching gears now, we're going to discuss cost affordability for solar. So, what do things look like right now? The truth is, we've seen a lot of growth and investment in Washington State over the past decade. Part of what's driving that is the declining cost of the technology itself. This is essentially owing to economy of scale. The more panels that are produced, the cheaper it is. In Washington State, costs do look a little different than what you're seeing here nationally, having stabilized around $2 to $3 a watt, depending on the size of the system. It is also worth noting that this is before you factor in the tax credit, other grants available, and incentives, which I'll get into in the next slide. I can admit it can be challenging to navigate all of the incentives available to you if you choose solar. So I'll do my best to describe them here. I'd also invite you to look these up yourselves or consult with a tax expert. Firstly, the federal solar tax credit, which was set to decrease and sunset by next year, but was recently extended to 2022 for the 26% tax credit. It will decrease in 2023 to 22%, and after then it will disappear except for commercial systems. As long as you own your solar energy system, you are eligible for the tax credit. Even if you don't have enough tax liability to claim the entire credit in 1 year, you can roll over the remaining credits into future years for as long as the tax credit is in effect. In 2019, Washington reinstated a state sales tax exemption, which cuts down another 8 to 10%, depending on the combination of state and local municipality sales tax rates. MACR's depreciation stands for Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System. MACR's is classified as an expense and may be deducted from your taxable income, thus reducing the cost incurred for the solar power system. Depreciation is your business's way of recovering the costs incurred from a solar power installation. The taxable basis is reduced by half of the 26% of the solar investment tax credit, so it is reduced to 87%. Qualifying solar energy equipment is eligible for a cost recovery period of up to 5 years. Finally, solar projects qualify for the USDA Rural Energy for America program, or REAP, grant, which I'll be getting into next. It is worth noting that all of these incentives are additive. Acquiring one does not take away from the other. A couple of other resources that are available to you that you should consider. Several farmers we've worked with have seen some success applying for the TILF Human Links Grant Program, more commonly known as the Washington State Organic and Sustainable Farming Fund. The grant has a maximum award amount of $10,000 or $20,000 over a 5-year period. The grant operates on an annual cycle. Usually, the notice of funding is published every year around January. It's worth noting that this grant program doesn't have a lot of funding overall and has become quite competitive. If you're interested in applying for this grant, you can discuss with us providing you with a letter of support in applying for the grant. There are also other energy efficiency incentives, not for solar, available to you, both through NRCS EQIP cost share, which can initially take a lot of time and effort to apply. I'd recommend contacting your local conservation district or NRCS office to learn more. The second incentive for energy efficiency I'd like to name is by your local utilities. These are often unique to the utility that you're hooked up to, so I'd recommend reaching out to them directly. There are also low interest loan programs for solar out there, like Puget Sound Cooperative's Energy Smart Loan Program. It's a very straightforward process to apply, and usually you hear back within 1 to 2 days. Finally, I wanted to provide you with a concrete example of a solar project that we worked on and what the return on investment looked like. What we're looking at here is an ROI for a 12 kilowatt system with an average market rate of $2.50 per watt. That equates to a total cost of approximately $30,000. Factoring in the REAP grant tax credit, makers, and sales tax exemption, that reduces the year one cost to approximately $10,700. That also includes an energy savings of approximately $1,200 a year, plus the savings from an estimated 4% electricity price inflation. Bottom line, the return on investment is about 6 years. Total net return over the span of 30 years, which is a solid estimate on the average lifespan of the solar panels, is over $50,000. And that doesn't include the projected increase in property value from installing the system. All right, here is where we're really going to dive deep, because the REAP grant is where our program can probably help you the most. The Rural Energy for America program provides financial assistance to farmers and small businesses in rural Washington to purchase, install, and construct renewable energy systems, to make energy efficiency improvements to non-residential buildings and facilities, to use renewable technologies that reduce energy consumption, and to participate in energy audits and renewable energy development assistance. The grant, which is reimbursable, pays for up to 25% of the total system costs. This includes installation and equipment, net metering fees, and other related costs. In some cases, roofing upgrades also qualify, as long as it is critical for the support structure of the system. For example, upgrading roof shingling doesn't qualify. Instead of the 25% grant, you can also apply for a 75% loan program, which is one or the other. I will say, however, that not all of our farmers, or even most of our farmers, apply for the loan program and instead opt for the grant program. While I've mostly been focusing on just solar today, I do want to note that all renewable energy and energy efficiency projects targeting business electricity usage are eligible. However, as I've already discussed, certain technologies are more viable than others. Owing to economy of scale and proven technologies and associated certifications, our program really only sees solar arrays and energy efficiency grant applications. So, how do you know if you qualify? USDA has two buckets for qualifying for the REAP grant. The first is as an agricultural producer. To qualify as a producer, at least 50% of your income has to come from gross receipts from the farm. Many of the smaller farmers we work with in Puget Sound don't qualify via this route because they are also pulling in off the farm income to supplement their farm business. So instead, we get many smaller farmers qualifying in the second bucket, which is as a rural small business. Farms are included in that, but we've also helped small landscaping companies, woodworking shops, and many others. Rural small businesses are defined as those located in an area other than a city or town with a population of greater than 50,000 people in the urbanized area of that city or town. Additionally, and just a side note, people of color, veterans, and female-owned farms, rural small businesses get a small boost in points based on USDA's definition of socially disadvantaged farmer or rural small business owner. To determine whether you live in a qualifying area as a rural small business, there is a map on USDA's website that you can enter your address. You can also give us a call at any time, and we can help determine whether you are in a qualifying area and if you qualify based on other measures. A few other qualifiers for the REAP grant. First, you need to own your land or have a lease agreement in place for at least 5 years. Secondly, you need to be the customer listed on the utility bill. Also, the grant only pays for business use, not residential, which means that at least 50% of the project has to apply towards business electricity usage. You will get docked a certain amount of points from the grant and a certain amount of dollars from the grant itself based on businesses versus residential usage of the solar system. For example, if 50% of the power supplied by the solar panels goes towards your business and the rest towards your home, then you would be eligible for only half of the 25% REAP grant, or 12.5%. Finally, you need to have at least 12 months of utility bills. While the REAP notice of funding for this year hasn't been posted yet, we've typically seen in past years an October 31st deadline and a March 31st deadline. The fall deadline is limited to smaller projects totaling $80,000 or less, while the spring deadline is opened up to projects of any size. The reason that USDA splits the REAP deadlines into two like this is because it allows smaller projects a leg up on those larger projects, because the larger projects often have a shorter return on investment, which really improves the competitiveness of their applications. Even though the notice of funding hasn't been posted yet, you should know that the 2018 Farm Bill guarantees REAP funding through 2023. You can also still apply whenever you'd like throughout the year, but depending on when you apply, it can take a while for award information to be posted. We usually advise folks to speak with their contractors before applying for REAP and set up a conditional agreement to wait for installation until after you hear back about whether you are awarded or not. A few disclaimers on REAP. First, you can't pay for the system or start installation of the project until after you've applied for the REAP grant. Second, the grant program has gotten increasingly competitive over the past few years, which decreases your chances of being awarded. Third, the grant paperwork is getting updated. We don't know how substantial these changes are yet, but for now, grant applications can be submitted as is with no changes required. Finally, we can help you in a few important ways. And because our program is funded via another USDA grant, we are able to provide assistance to you for free. Primarily, we can help you apply for the REAP grant. Ultimately, that takes a lot of paperwork off of your plate. We are also well connected with local contractors, and we can provide detailed financial projections and other resources to you so that you can make a well-informed decision on whether solar makes sense for you. And that's it. Here's contact info in case you're interested in learning more about the program, the REAP grant, and what other options are available to you as you consider solar for your farm. We're always happy to have a chat on the phone or over email. Thanks a lot.